right, race fans, are you ready? An action-packed week of racing on episode 65 of the One to Go Show. I'm Ryan Aho. That is the one and only Bert Lehman. Bert, how you doing, man?
Doing really good. I've probably watched more racing in the first part of a year of any of my 50 years that I've been on the face of the earth.
And there has been a ton of drama, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. Racing is like a male soap opera, right? That's why we love it. But my goodness, I mean, we're gonna talk, folks. Drama at like literally every race that's gone on in the last week. It's been absolute craziness. And let's get started with that. Obviously the big week going, this past week is, if you're a late model fan, right? And if you're not, I'm sorry, right? But the biggest thing for the late model fans clearly is East Bay. And last year the racing was just unbelievable there. This year it was like, oh my gosh, like what did they do to the track? And I talked to Buzzy Adams. Incidentally, Bert, he did contact me after our last show. He says, first of all, you wouldn't have lapped me. Second of all, the tires were softer back then. And third of all, you had spoilers back then. And fourth of all, they actually added clay now and made the track flat, so it's way slower. I'm like, all right, fair enough. And no, I would not lap Buzzy Adams. Buzzy Adams is a stud, right? It's just the way it is. So, but he talked about that. But the track, it was crazy. I mean, they flattened it completely out. You could tell. I mean, nobody had right front grip, right rear grip. They're sliding around the track, smashing into each other. It was nothing but mayhem the whole time. And Wednesday night, obviously we talked about Monday and Tuesday on last week's show, but Wednesday night they kind of started getting through. The rain came, Mother Nature won. They moved the feature till actually 2 B mains and the feature to the next night on Thursday. And as a racer, one thing I thought that was weird there, Bert, is normally if you do double features, they run the existing show first, and then they roll into the next one, and they kind of did it the opposite here. And there was people that tore some shit up in that first one who had to go to backup car and stuff for the second show. I think the winner might have been one of them. I think, but I'm not positive on that.
Yes.
Yeah, Josh. Yeah. So that was kind of weird that they did that. But I was talking to Jeff Krause, and it's like they're having double features, and they started with the track drier than they had all week. It's like, oh God. So it was not good racing on Thursday night. I mean, it dried out, and it actually took rubber. It took rubber in the second one. The first one was literally bone dry, one lane on the bottom, all marbles, and I was kind of arguing with somebody on Facebook. They're like, it's taking rubber. I'm like, it's not taking rubber. Their lap times are 2.5 seconds slower. Like, what are you talking about? It took rubber in the second one because they were like down, I think, in the 15s or whatever they were cruising, but not real good racing. But kind of a cool thing there, Bert, on Thursday, Stormy Scott parking that baby in Victory Lane, and I raced against him and his brother. Hell, I mean, they're really good drivers. They won a ton in the modifieds. And one thing I like about the Scotts, they remind me of me. We got them cheeks, turning into little pork chops over there. It's like, my goodness, guys. Like, I feel like I could get back in the car. If he can win, I put on some pounds. I could probably win too. I don't know. But it was good to see him. They struggled the last couple of years. And, you could tell when they talked to him, he was doubt was kind of creeping in. All these naysayers, you can't cut it. And, they were hearing the noise. And he said he kind of had to get off social media for a while because he couldn't handle it. And, the confidence is a big deal. It really is. And when things ain't going right and the confidence gets shaken, it gets worse and worse and worse. And the second race, of course, we talked about Josh Richards. Anything stick out to you on Thursday night from the race in action over at East Bay?
I mean, it's always good to see somebody get their first feature win. I mean, like you said, I mean, when you're in a series or in a division, when you're new into the division, I mean, he's only been racing late models for a few years. So, I mean, he's fairly new to the division, and, you don't get some wins, doubt starts to creep in. So, it's good to see newcomers get victories, but because that keeps them energized and, keeps them wanting to get more victories. And, I'm sure he could, jump into a modified again and just start winning right away. So hopefully this victory will ease some of his doubt about being able to race a late model, and because he was running up front in some other races too. So hopefully he can put it together. And as far as the double features, Josh Richards, he had to go to a backup car because he was involved in a wreck earlier in the evening where the entire right side was bashed in on his car. I can't remember what exactly happened.
Well, there was like 872 cautions, so it's hard to remember all of them, right? It's just the way it is.
And I think Mark Whitner was driving a different car for the first portion because he was driving number 5, where for the rest of the week he was driving a triple digit number on his or number 38 or something. So he had a completely different number on his car for one of the shows.
Well, what stuck out to me there is he said, hey, I'm going to jump in my car for this show because I don't want to give away the front row, because my understanding was if you didn't race the same car, like if you went to a different car, that you had to go to the back. And I can see why they just ixnayed that whole rule, right? Because you don't normally run the makeup feature after the program. That don't even make sense. So Mark Whitener, what he said is, he was actually saving, because I think he started on the front row in the makeup feature. So he was saving his car for that because he didn't want to take the chance of having to start in the back. Well, then Josh Richards tears his stuff up, and guess what? He didn't have to start in the back. They let him start in his regular starting spot. So, had he known that, he might have just stayed in the same car. I don't really know. It's one of those deals. It's like, well, it's one of the Lucas Oil followers. So are they making up rules here just because, well, we don't want to hurt his feelings? Because in all honesty, I'm still baffled, I guess, why they flipped that around. As a race fan, I'm really disappointed they did, because if they would have ran that first feature right away, there might have still been moisture in the racetrack, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it would have been for a whole lot better racing, but it is what it is. Josh Richards getting his first win. And then Friday night, we've been talking, Bert, literally every single night, all the Lucas Oil races were won by a different driver, including Friday night. And coming into that night, our big 3, so to speak, from last year, which is B-Shep, Jimmy Owens, and of course, Brandon Overton, they were all held winless. And it's like, who would have thought you would have been that many races in without any of them winning a race? And finally, Big Sexy got her done, parked it in victory lane, and just like his USA Nationals win, it was overshadowed by some drama from Turbo, right?
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, it was same winner in both races. But yeah, Turbo, he definitely draws attention from certain things because when he does his thing on the track.
Let's hold off on that. Let's come back to that. Right. Yeah, we'll come back to that because we'll touch on Saturday, and then we'll add that into our closing thoughts here on East Bay. Saturday, we're going to talk about Turbo, and he was, turned out to be like a big zero. Like he had the worst night ever on Friday, but he got hero status there on Saturday. And what's crazy is I don't even think he hit anybody on Saturday. I think he drove to the front. He was a good boy, and he's the first guy to actually win 2 Lucas Oil races, and I believe that's 4 on the year, right? Because he won 2 in Arizona. And the Dirt on Dirt, I was watching the ride home, and they're like, man, is Turbo in the conversation right now for number 1 driver? Because he's got 4 wins. He's the only one with double digits. So I never thought I'd be saying that. Tonight he didn't have a good night. We'll talk about that also. But, he's the first guy with 4 wins. So he's off to a good start. I'll bet a dramatic start, but we'll talk about that in a second. So Brandon Overton gets the victory. Final thoughts there. Okay, a couple things that stick out, and I know you got a couple things that you want to talk about, and I have a couple things that I want to talk about. But Brandon Sheppard and Jimmy Owens, wow. I mean, they especially Owens. He has been absolutely just like nothing can go right. I mean. Because he's both them two are among the most talented drivers in all of late model racing. And that just shows you just how tricky, or I don't know what you want to call the track. It was not conducive to like real good racing. Although 3 nights, like guys came from ninth to win. I don't know if that was from attrition or how that all happened, but literally, does that surprise you that them two are just not off to a good start?
Well, I mean, it surprises. I mean, it doesn't necessarily surprise me that they didn't get any victories, just because, I mean, there's 70 plus cars at every race, but the way they don't have any victories, especially Jimmy Owens, I mean, he has had no luck whatsoever. I mean, I think he blew I don't know if he blew an engine, but I know one of the earlier nights he pulled into the pits, and if you read the lips on one of his crew guys, he said, "Did you blow it up?" So it was an engine issue. The one of the early nights, and one of the later nights, he was going into the corner. This might have been in the heat race, and basically a spring and a shock flew off his car. Did you see that?
I did. It looked like the rear end came over. Something, a bolt maybe came out. I don't know if it just the slider came out. I'm not sure. But yeah, a spring and a shock came out. It looked like it was out of the right rear because it was hunkered over. And yeah, it just
and then,
when things ain't going right, they just continue. And I think he's going to turn around at Volusia. If I were to pick a place for him to turn it around, I think, didn't he win 3 at Volusia last year?
He won a bunch early in the season last year.
Yeah.
And, so, well, I mean, you were thinking that, maybe once they leave East Bay, his luck would turn around, but that didn't happen tonight. We're recording this on Monday night. And
yeah, we'll talk about that in a second here when we get to that night. But, yeah, it's just going from bad to worse. And I would say it's one of those deals that don't – and that just shows, right? It does not matter if you're the number one guy in all racing or somebody that's just a mid-pack guy. Everybody goes through shit, right? And a buddy of mine, Jason Tennis, I was kind of having a slump one year, and he says, when you're going through hell, you got to keep going because you don't want to get stuck there. So racers, trust me, Jimmy Owens has got to be extremely frustrated right now, but, he's probably been in those situations before, and if there's a guy that's going to overcome it, it's definitely him. Another thing that sticks out, so we talk about a couple veterans. Of course, Jimmy Owens is way older than these guys, right? But we were kind of hyping up some rookies coming into this deal, right? Especially after Arizona. You got RTJ finishing the top 3 about every night. Strickler, of course, he won at Volusia, and he looked really good over there. And next thing you know, they're at East Bay, and it's like, these guys are just non-factors. And Ricky kind of in the end of the week was better. I think he had 3 straight top 10s, but he just neither one of them looked fast. Like, as much hype as we were giving them, like, these guys not only are going to contend for Rookie of the Year, but they're going to win some races. And it's like, oh boy, they really struggled at East Bay. And of course, Ricky turned it around tonight. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Well,
a little controversy, but
you mentioned, that Strickler had won that race at Volusia, but he was driving a different car in that race.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if there are conversations going on in that team right now about, maybe we got to get into a different car.
Yeah, maybe, but it's one of those things where as a racer, when you go to a track that is just completely oddball, right? And I'm going to say East Bay was, perfectly flat, marbly, nothing else like it, right? You kind of got to take, and Buzzy Adams told me this all the time, and he talked about it with his MB mod. He's like, we learned a lot. We got better and better and better, but I got to take everything I learned down there and throw it completely out the window because none of it applies to literally any other racetrack around. So it's one of those deals where I think drivers were getting to the end of the week going, all right, one more night. Let's just get this over with. We can take a night, get some good sleep, go to the beach tomorrow, catch our breath. And now we're going to go to a different racetrack, which is also unique. Right, we'll talk about that. But I think a lot of people struggled at East Bay, but I wouldn't look at that as that's how their season's going to go because that place was so weird for speed weeks. So I think that I think both cars will be fast. I don't know which one he's going to run. Do you know which one he had at Ocala?
He had the white one, so it's one that the team has. It's the team car.
Which one? And is that the one that he ran at Volusia?
No, he ran.
Same
he
one
has a
as
black car. He has a black car. Yeah.
Okay, and this is a Rocket, right? Yeah,
I believe so.
I know he
I
has a
believe
Rocket, Longhorn. I can't keep up, but regardless, it's different cars. People can look that part up for sure.
I
So,
believe the black car is his own equipment.
okay.
I
Oh,
think.
it is. Okay.
Well, I think that's the one he raced like last year a few times. I could be wrong on that, so don't
Okay.
quote
Yeah,
me.
I don't know how all that works, but needless to say, they did not leave there happy. I can tell you that. I mean, the points deal, and I mean they were just they put themselves behind the eight ball right out of the gate here. Now, let's
Well,
talk. Go ahead
maybe you
before we
know
get
the
into
answer to
Turbo.
this. Do the rookie points start now, or do they start after? Because rookies have until April to declare for Rookie of the Year. So do the points still start now?
I believe so. I
Okay.
think it ties in with the Lucas points. I think they take 5 out of the 5 out of the
Okay.
9 shows. So I think that ties in. I could be wrong on that. I don't hold me to it. We could probably look at the Lucas Oil website to kind of see how that works. But I feel like there, however the points work for like the whole season, I think that kind of follows suit.
Okay.
But one thing that I heard is once they declare for it, right, that even if they decide not to follow it, they can't declare for it again. So
Okay.
that is one thing I heard. So, you talk about Strickler, you talk about Ricky, like they declared, like they said, hey, we're running for the Rookie of the Year deal. Well, if they have till that cutoff date, maybe they can change their mind up to that date, right? And after that date, if they've declared and then like struggle really bad, and then they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'll try for Rookie next year. They can't do that. So once you declare once, that's it. That's you get to declare one time, and that's all you get. So they have some decisions to make, but I think things are starting to look up for at least one of them, and we'll talk about that. But before we get to that, obviously, right? If you've been on social media, if you're watching racing, if you're paying attention to anything at all, the whole story from Friday night was Turbo. And Bert, I'm gonna, I'll lay it out. I'm guessing that everybody that's watching this or listening to the show has already seen it many times. But just in case you haven't, if you're on vacation or whatever, in heat race action, Turbo at the time was in second. Ziggy drove down underneath them, give him just a hip check. Not bad. I mean, it was enough to move him up out of the groove, got him loose, and Turbo fell back to fourth, didn't make the show through the heat, and Ziggy got second, right? So clearly at that point, Turbo's pissed. I mean, I'm a racer. Like, if somebody knocks me out of a transfer spot with a hip check, I'm upset. It is what it is. You're going to be mad. And he comes around the back straightaway. He catches up to him, and then he kind of gives him one like in the middle of 3 and 4 after the race. And they kind of bumped and his car kind of jumped up in the air, but it didn't look like it really caused a whole lot of damage or anything like that. Instantaneously, the Lucas Oil officials said you're done for the night. Bert, your thoughts?
All right. Well, you know me, I like to walk the line, but I'm gonna say it was an overreaction on Lucas Oil Series part. I mean, the problem is after the incident last year, everybody's watching Herb now. So, any little thing he does is going to be scrutinized. But I think it was an overreact Lucas Oil Series. If you want to disqualify him from the race and make him start in the back of a B or whatever, fine. But I don't think it warranted being disqualified from the rest of the night. We'll talk about an incident later on that I think was more warranted, and we'll get into that later.
Yeah, and here's the thing: it's first of all, let's be honest. Okay, Turbo hits everything. I mean, he does. I mean, he's a slide job king. He uses a quarter panel, and you know what? As a fan, I love it. I love it. If I raced against him, I'd be fencing him for sure, right? Because I would not want to race against a guy because he's giving you one. If you're battling for position and he's near you, he's death sliding you, bank for it, whatever he's got to do. So knowing that, okay, it's kind of like the golden rule, right? If you're, I don't know if it's a golden rule, but it's one of the rules, right? Is if you're willing to dish it out, you best be willing to take it. And,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a little altercation the night before, right? They got into it the night before. So some of that was carryover from that, of course, right? But, when somebody hip checks you out of the way, if that's how you race, you better just kind of expect it, and so he overreacted, and it's kind of like hockey, right? Our buddy Puka, he's a big hockey guy, and you can get tripped or elbowed or hooked or whatever, and then all of a sudden you hack the guy back, and it's like, well, you're the one getting the penalty because they saw you and they probably didn't even see the first one. Now they saw the first one, but it's not like he spun him out, stuffed him in the wall, drove over him, wrecked him. He literally just bumped him out of the way. So Turbo overreacted on that one for sure. I mean, he's got to be smarter than that. But I would agree totally that you can't be booting a guy. I mean, I've seen way worse than that.
Right.
I mean, and let's be honest. I mean, now over the whole season, if you ever see any little bit of a little bump after the race, are they going to disqualify that guy every single night?
Exactly.
And if they do, great. But here's the deal. Here's the difference. At Speed Weeks, they take 5 out of your best 9 shows. Okay? When we get past that and into the regular season, if they boot you for the night, you are absolutely screwed. So it really didn't hurt Turbo because he has all these throwaway shows anyway. Right?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I think we have to check into that because I heard something on the podcast or on watching the race tonight that he got 50. I think they were talking about Turbo. I didn't catch who they were talking about, but I think it was about Turbo that he got 50 show up points for that night. But that night cannot be thrown out. He can't throw that night out.
Oh, okay. And that honestly, that would make sense.
We have to check in. We have to check in on that to verify that. But that's what I think they said.
And honestly, that would make sense, right? Because if they, I know in WISSOTA racing, I mean, if they take the best 3 for your point average and you get disqualified one night, I mean, they count that night too. So I mean, it's one of those deals where I can see them counting that. I guess I don't know that for sure. So if that's the case, I'll be curious to see over the course of the year if they handle it the same way with everybody. And my answer to that is there ain't a freaking chance, right? There's no chance because let's get into the next incident that happened. And the next incident that happened was with Mason Ziegler, again, with Ziggy, making a lot of friends, right? And Chase Youngins, okay? So, Bert, first thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to let you touch on this, is what's interesting to me, there was an altercation, and all of a sudden the camera turns over, and there's Youngin's car upside down. Now, I've been watching all the racing, and so have you, and they have 852 camera angles. It drives me nuts, right? They're like changing here, and over the. You can't tell me that they didn't catch that on camera, right? They got camera angles everywhere, and to this day, I still have not seen a replay of that event. Have you?
No, I have not seen a replay of. I did see somebody posted on Facebook that they did see the event, but I don't know if somebody was at the races themselves and recorded it and they saw it that way. But yes, I have not seen a replay of that wreck.
So Bert, why don't you tell the race fans here what happened, and then your thoughts on what happened?
I mean, what I'm going to tell you, I have to give credit to Dirt on Dirt because Kevin Kovac does a great job of talking to drivers after races and finding out little nuggets and of information. And so he wrote a story about the incident. It was actually a pretty long story, and it was posted on Dirt on Dirt at 2:30 in the afternoon on Saturday. So it was prior to Saturday night's races. But basically, Young Hands admitted. Well, first, I guess Ziegler, when Kovac talked to Ziegler told him that when Young Hands got out of the car and was yelling at him, he yelled that, this was payback for an incident that happened in September at a track in Pennsylvania. So then Kovac went to Young Hands, and Young Hands verified it. He admitted, he flat out took him out. I mean, this is his quote. I just drove into him, Plain and simple. That's what Younghand said, who's a World of Outlaw regular. And then at the end of his quote, he said, "I have 6 of these cars at the house ready to go." And earlier, Younghand said, and this is all in Kevin Kovac's story on Dirt on Dirt. So if you want to read the whole story, go there. But I'm just sharing some quotes. Oh, I don't give a shit, Younghand said. No, not at all. They build new ones every day. It's just money. They print that every day too. and then so you kind of get the mentality of where Younghands is coming from in this whole incident. And then later on, Ziegler was quoted, "Younghand sits over there on the little high chair at his trailer and doesn't really do anything all day. So I don't know what to say to the guy. I don't think he has a work ethic or really understands what it takes. Either way, it's all insane."
Yeah, a little bit of drama there for sure.
I mean, and see, to me, this was Younghands flat out admitted he took a driver out at high speed in the middle of a race. To me, if I was Lucas Oil, Younghand should not have raced Saturday night.
That's what I'm saying. You kicked Turbo out for a little tiny bump after the race. And was it right? Should he do it? No, I get it, right? I get it. But literally, it was just a little bump. And now what's funny about this is, this is just another one of those retaliation things. Youngins goes to yard sale. Ziggy rolls himself over. What an idiot, right? I mean, and don't get me wrong, Ziggy, he's not afraid to hit check either. I've seen him do 3-car slide jobs. I mean, he's on the loud pedal. I love watching it, right? But so them guys had a little altercation. I think it was Smoky Mountain where they got together in September, I think is where it was. But I mean, we're talking October, November, December, January, February. We're talking like almost 5 months later. Come on. And that's, and I'm the side with Ziggy on this one. First of all, did Ziggy get, I don't know, I have to look back to see. I'm curious to see what the incident was that they're talking about September. Okay. I'm curious on that. But myself, and I don't care. I'm just going to say it. I was a guy that when I raced, I didn't have a ton of money. There's a couple of years I had some fantastic sponsorship to make it all work, right? I had great sponsors, but I didn't have Chase Youngin's money, right? And whatever, more power to them. Nothing wrong with that. If a person's got backing, that's great. Okay, nothing against that. But I get really annoyed with these spoiled brats that sit there and they watch, like daddy's got, paid pit guys that do everything, and you're over there doing your nails and playing on your iPad. Well, it's like, work on the car. What's wrong with you, right? So if he actually had to turn wrenches, work on the car, do body work, and actually had to do something, would he be intentionally smashing stuff up? I don't know. I don't know. But my point is exactly what you said. Spot on. Is if they're going to boot Turbo for a night for a little bump, and then they don't boot him when he intentionally yard sale someone, and why? Okay, the question is, why has MAV TV not showed that? Why is that clip not out there for the public? Why is it not there? What? I mean, that does not make any sense to me, because first of all, that's ratings, right? If you start showing that and then you show it here's the feud, that's going to engage more people, right, wrong, or indifferent. I don't know what the hell they were thinking there. You think they got to have the view of it, but it's crazy. So I'll be curious to see how they handle things moving forward.
And then the weird thing too is, Younghands is a World of Outlaw regular. And the only reason he was in that race in the first place is he got an emergency Lucas Oil provisional. Why does he get an emergency provisional from Lucas Oil? He's not even a regular in the series.
From what I understand is after a certain amount of races, they took a couple from last year's points and then a couple from this year's points. And then, yeah, you're exactly right. It's like he's not even a follower of the series and he's getting them emergency provisionals. Yeah, and what's crazy is he took that provisional, then went out and wrecked somebody. And that's what it comes down when it comes down to T-Mac, right? T-Mac, and I've always thought of T-Mac is literally a laid back, not, I could be wrong. I haven't paid enough attention, I guess. But the way I've pictured him is laid back, generally pretty quiet, kind of introverted, doesn't even like to do a lot of interviews. And when they talked to him, he had some words to say, right? He said, fear equals respect. And then he actually threw a few cuss words in there where I'm like, whoa, T-Mac, like I didn't expect that from him. Like there was some passion behind it. But what he said is there's there's no there's no rules with any. You can smash anybody you want, spin them out, do whatever you want. You can drive like an idiot. You can carve on people. There's no penalties for nothing. You can do whatever you want. It's ridiculous. And what they need is good old school racing where if you got somebody coming in and just yard sailing people every single race, when they get down in the pits, knock their teeth out. Have a boxing match, throw down, because that ends it. Because he's exactly right. If there's somebody back there that's willing to throw down, they're knocking people out, smacking people around. That person is going to think long and hard about bankboarding drivers because fear equals respect. And that was a great quote by T-Mac. And what's your thoughts on T-Mac? What was your thoughts on that comment? Did that surprise you coming from him?
Not totally, because T-Mac he's kind of in interviews, he kind of tells it the way it is. Yeah, he usually doesn't use swear words or profanity in it. I mean, because I think he was the driver who actually stopped a post-race interview because some fans were swearing, and he asked the fans not to swear because there were kids around. So yeah, that part, it was surprising, but T-Mac generally will tell you what's on his mind. He does it in a nice way, though. He doesn't yell it. So yeah. So that may be a difference.
And that just tells you how frustrated people were after like 6 nights at East Bay. I mean, there was yellow after yellow after yellow, and it was absolute mayhem there. And another thing that was interesting, so JD, right? And let's talk about Jonathan Davenport, because at Arizona, he was bolted. I mean, he was again, between him, Turbo, and RTJ, they were clearly the 3 best cars there. And I think he won 3 features over there. And we're like, is he going to carry that momentum over to Speed Weeks, right? And he went 5 features in a row outside of the top 10. We're like, what is going on? Like,
wow,
what is his deal?
Not only that, he had to use provisionals almost every night to get into the features.
Well, let me ask you about that, because he cried like a schoolgirl up at Cedar Lake because they're like, oh, we want to have, he didn't like the format because it was passing points. Well, does he not like, is he sick of the time trials to straight up now too? Because that clearly wasn't working for him either, right?
Well, the problem was, there were times when he started on the front row and he still couldn't qualify.
Yeah, he was going backwards. So, and that's, he struggled. It was crazy. But on the last night, he looked pretty good. He got second, and I think he switched cars too. I think he switched to a different car. He's like, man, I wish I would have did this earlier. He got to second, and he was in striking distance, not there. Of course, Turbo won, and he made some comments. Somebody asked him, like, could you have gone harder? And Bert, what do you got on that?
Well, yeah, I listened to his post-race interview, and like you said, he was able to run down Turbo on the low side, and the last couple laps, I'm watching that race, and I'm thinking, Davenport, you got to go to the top side. You're not going to pass him on. If you have any shot of winning, you have to go to the top to try to power around them. And then on the last lap, he finally did do that. But in his post-race interview, and maybe this is the reporter coming back in me, I try to read more into what drivers say. But, he made the comment that, he tore up a car. So this was they were racing a different car. And he was just happy to be in second, that he could have jumped to the high side and pushed the issue earlier. But he was just happy to be in second. So I don't know if that means in the back of the mind, he knew who was leading the race. And, with the, we know Turbo can be aggressive, and, so maybe Davenport was worried about a slider that would damage another car, or just a slider where it causes him to spin out and, Herb to keep going, because they have that no fault rule. So even if it wouldn't have been Davenport's fault, he would have went to the back. So, did Turbo's aggressiveness and the no fault rule play into Davenport's mind as let's just stay in second. We've had a tough week. Let's just finish second and go home from here.
Well, I can tell you a guy that kind of played that game, and I raced a lot of laps against him. His name is Kelly Esty. And this guy won a ton of mod races up in my region. Probably he's got to be the winningest driver in mods in kind of the northern part of Minnesota. But a new guy come in, right? Or even somebody that all of a sudden they just got fast, and he would just rough your shit up. Like he'd hip check you, he'd drive over your left front, he'd pinch you, he would smash you. I mean, it was just the way it was, and people react differently. Some people would be like literally, oh shit, there's Esty, and they kind of like the rest of the year he'd dive to the inside, they'd all move out of the way because we had a point average lineup. He had to have started 12th for like 8 straight years because he always had the high point average, and he'd be driving up, and you could visibly see he'd duck to the inside of that timid person, and then they just move out of the way, and he'd drive right by him. So there is that. Maybe Turbo had that going for him, but on the flip side, you know, you get against a guy like Ziggy or Youngins in that case, or if you hip check them too much, they're coming after you, and that usually ended it too, because once a person kind of played his game, then there was not that anymore. So Turbo likes that bad boy image, right? I mean, if you look at his apparel on his Turbo Threads, if you look on his website, it's all bad boy image stuff, right? It's all like literally he's playing right into that deal. So there is a psychological advantage to that because certain people will kind of back off. Is that what Davenport did? I don't know. Or was it maybe he had 5 straight nights of not being in the top 10 and he's like, I just want to survive. If I can be on the podium, like that is a win. And he said afterwards, he said, I never had so many people come up and congratulate me for second in my entire life. It was crazy. So good to see Davenport kind of get back up in the podium there. Any closing thoughts there on East Bay? It was crazy.
I mean, one thing that came to mind is the number of provisionals that they give out. I mean, we know there's a lot of yellows, but you're starting 30 cars on, what is it, a 3rd-mile track? And, you know, maybe that plays into some of the caution mania that takes place there. I mean, because they gave away 2 provisionals based on last year's points, 2 provisionals based on this year's points, and then plus emergency provisionals.
And wasn't there one for like the fastest qualifier too, or something like that? Because that
I don't know. There may have been.
And they have one reserved. I think it's just unreserved if your name is Earl Pearson Jr. In fact, I heard the Dirt on Dirt guys say, you know what? He should just no longer qualify, no longer run heats, no longer run beats, just take the provisional, because he caught up into the top 10 like night after night after night from the back. So I don't know what he's got going on early in the night, but later in the night, I think he just stayed out of trouble for the most part, which, you know, turned out to be pretty good for him.
Well, Devin Moran did that a lot too, where he started deep in the field, and but I mean, Moran left East Bay in second place, I believe, in points. So it worked out pretty well for him.
Up there for sure. Yeah, he's going to be fun to watch. So let's jump off, right? Let's jump over to the sprint cars. And over at Screven, they had the All-Star Tony Stewart series, the All-Star Sprints. They had a 2-day show over there, and my buddy Keith says you got to watch sprint cars because it's definitely more exciting than late models, and it was. And I saw Troy Powers even post. I think Troy posted it on the 2020 page. There was in the B main, a guy kind of carved on the guy coming to the checkered, and they both did wheel stands going to the checkered flag. It was pretty cool. You don't see that in the late model, I promise. That's
no.
But you know, night number 1, a guy from our area, probably one. I mean, he's got to be in the top 3 as far as most wins in the history of sprint car racing. You know, behind of course Kinzer and probably Sammy. But Donnie Schatz, he picked up a win. Now, the question I have is, was it a gift, right? Should he have got that win? Bert, what's your thoughts?
Well, you're talking about Hoddenchild, right? Well, it's funny because I didn't watch those races until today. So I watched them. I watched the replay on Flow, which is actually kind of nice because with the sprint cars, if there's a red, you know, they don't have starters, so they have to push start. So I'm able to fast forward through that. So that actually works out kind of nice. But yeah, the the announcer said Hottenchild is knifing his way through lap traffic, and within 30 seconds of that, he was involved in a wreck with cars at the tail end of the lead lap. And I'm assuming they have the no fault rule too, so he goes to the back.
Oh, it was ridiculous. So these lappers all take each other out in the back, and as the yellow's coming out, like as it's coming out, he spins out into them because there's nowhere to go, right? The track it's not a huge half mile. It's pretty narrow. So literally he had to slide the car, come to a stop, and like not get into the melee. And boom, he went to the back. I'm here to tell you that's the most idiotic thing. He was so pissed off. He went down to the building after, and he was like having a complete meltdown. They had to call security down there. I mean, he went pretty apeshit. And I don't blame him. You know, people, you're in a position to win, and regardless if you're on a hot streak or not, it's not easy to win, especially at the higher levels. It's just not, or even at lower levels. I mean, it don't matter. It's not easy to win races. And when you are clearly the fastest car, when you clearly have the race won, right? It's done, it's over, and then you spin out to avoid a bunch of people that wrecked in front of you that were lap traffic, and they put you to the back. It's just dumb. And we're gonna talk more about this because it happened again multiple times over the week. This same stupid rule. So he got a rough call there. Donnie Schatz, which Schatz is he's a former WISSOTA champion, so he's kind of one of our guys. So if he couldn't win, it's good to see Schatz get in victory lane. Now, night number 2, Hottenchild couldn't blame the no fault rule because he kind of stepped on his wiener and spun himself out. So his night.
What sucked for him was he had a 2-second lead, and then the caution came out. I mean, he had the field covered. Without that caution, he probably wins that unless he breaks. But yeah, the caution came out, and then he lost the lead on the restart, and then he spun out all by himself. So yeah, he didn't have a very good weekend. But that second night, did you see who was on the front row in the B main? Tony Stewart and Donnie Schatz.
Oh, I did not see that. Okay.
Yeah,
and now, do you know why Donnie Schatz was in a B main?
No.
So he got second in his heat. Okay. And they have a rule there where most places I've ever been to in my entire life, it's been, okay, top 3 to the scales, top 5 to the scales. Well, they got some other deal where they call out over the headset, like who has to go to the scales. Evidently, he didn't hear that it was him. Like he thought he heard something else, and they pushed him back. He went back to his pit, and so he didn't go to the scales after the heat race. So he went from getting second to getting 10th and had to go to the B main.
Okay.
So,
yeah. He did finish 4th in the feature, so he was able to work his way through traffic. And then did you also notice that the race ended, the checkered was coming out, and then a caution came out, but they didn't restart the race. The race was just over.
that is good, because I got sick of seeing that at East Bay where they throw, like, literally the race should have been over multiple times. So yeah, that was, I did see that. That was a good thing. And the winner of that deal, Aaron Reitzel. Now, I don't know much about this guy. I got a buddy of mine that watches a lot of sprint car racing, and he said he's actually running for the Roth team now, and he's going to follow the World of Outlaw Series. And he looked racy. It's going to be fun to watch him. It's another addition to the World of Outlaw Sprints. And I thought last year it was highly entertaining. So now you get another guy in there that's going to be very competitive. Pretty excited to see Aaron Reitzel. So that's kind of it on the sprint car stuff. Now, there was another race, and I think I think the reason Puka's not on the show today, he's still down there watching this race down in Georgia. Boyd Speedway, they had the Cabin Fever, and they had 38 classes. I think it was like 9 or some stupid thing. It was like a 10.5-hour program, Bert. It was just one of those absolute marathon races, and I am so utterly thankful that I can this was on Flow, where I could just fast forward through all that stuff and just watch that feature. Now, it's kind of cool to maybe watch some more of it. You might see some more.
You could also fast forward through the feature.
There is that, because, I mean, put it this way. So the late models, super late models, because they had 8 classes, so we'll call it the super late models. They ran their feature first, but they time trial everybody. Weird format down there at all these tracks. They go straight from time trials and they lock in the top 6 or 8 right into the feature, and then they run B mains. They don't even run heats. It's like the weirdest thing. It's like I don't understand, but whatever. That's their format. But the time trials for all these classes, it's like, what are they doing? I mean, it's just like, oh, I couldn't even handle that. But then we get to the late model feature, Bert, and I'll touch on kind of what happened. Then I'll get your thoughts. So the track was locked down. I mean, it was black top to bottom. It was one lane of rubber about half a lane up. I mean, it was horrible. There was no passing. The track was complete garbage, right? In the front row, Christian Hanger, he's a young guy. We kind of watched him race a little bit last year. And a guy by the name of Randy Weaver, who is supposedly a legend down there. This guy thinks won a ton of races. They're on the front row. Well, if it's one lane, you need to, they always say races aren't won on the first lap. Yeah, bullshit. When the race is one, it's rubber, it's one on the first lap, period. It's just like you're wrong. Okay. And the Hanger come in the 1 and 2, and folks, you can kind of watch it here, but he kind of slid him. And it wasn't like he didn't quarter panel him, he didn't Tyler Erbrom. He slid him, he cleared him, and Weaver had the opportunity to just lift, turn back under, or just kind of fall in line. Stays in the gas, clips his right rear, spins around in the circle, yellow comes out. Okay, now the rule is, on the no fault rule, is once a lap's completed, right? There wasn't even a lap completed. It was the first lap. It was so literally both of them, according to the rule, should have both got their spots back, and it should have just been a do-over. I don't know if I agree with that either. I think that if you cause a yellow, whether it's right away or not, you should go to the back. Well, guess who went to the back on that, Bert? Christian Hanger. So the guy that caused it kept going, right? Weaver. Christian Hanger spins the guy out, or Christian Hanger gets spun out. He stops. He goes to the back. Well, it's one lane rubber, and guess what? Race is basically over. Randy Weaver wins, and like you said, you can fast forward it from about that point all the way to the checkered flag, and you won't miss anything.
Because it was a 40-minute race, a 40-lap race that lasted 40 minutes on a rubbered up track.
It was brutal, just brutal. Now, after the race, okay, Hanger's pissed. I mean, he's clearly mad. And they pull off the track, getting into turn 1, and you're seeing the clip right now as we talk about it. Oh, he obviously showed his displeasure and drives right into Weaver, spins him around, drives into him again, they disqualified him. They gave him last place for that deal, and they all go out there on their way. Weaver comes back on the track with the top 3, and they're talking to him. Go ahead.
Did you see?
Yes.
Yes, I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah. So some of Weaver's pit guy, they ran up there. They were kind of like waiting, right? And he about ran them all over. And it's like, first of all, why are they even getting involved? Like, your driver just spun this guy out, okay? Like, he has a right to be pissed off, period, right? And they're up there after this guy is clearly pissed off, like, because people are like, I've seen people say online, well, he had 40 laps to get back to the front. Okay, idiot. It's a one-lane rubber down track. You don't have, they ain't getting back to the front. The race is over for him, right? So they're up there, and they're jawing at him and kind of going after him. So then he just stood on the gas, and one of them flipped over. I'm like, good, run him over. That's what he deserves. You being a dumbass, play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. That's just how it works. I don't know what else to say at that point. But I want your thoughts on that. You watched that, Bert. Clearly, that was way worse than the turbo deal, right? But what is your thoughts on that altercation right there?
Well, we're going to get into this a little later, the no fault rule, but ultimately that was the main cause of what happened after that. Because Weaver clearly spun him out. I don't know if you watched the interviews after the race. Weaver, they were talking about how the track was only one lane, it rubbered up, and Weaver's comment was, all I want is one lane. I don't need 3. So you don't want any, you want to race on a one lane rubbered up track? granted, you're in the lead, so yeah, I guess you do. But I mean,
and he also said he did it on purpose, right? He says, "Well, he come across my nose the first time, he come across my nose again, so I just let him have it." It's like, so he admitted doing it, but why wouldn't you? Right? The rule's there. Why wouldn't you do it?
Right. And then, well, I mean, I have I like Donald McIntosh now because he finished second in the race, and so the announcer goes to interview him, and the announcer goes, you know, it seemed like Weaver had luck on his side because you guys would catch lap traffic, and then the caution would come out. So it seemed like he had luck on his side. And McIntosh said he won the race on the opening lap when he spun Hanger out.
I did see that, yeah. And so he wasn't afraid of, and every, like, Weaver supposed, and I don't know this guy, but evidently he's got a lot of history. Like, he's won a lot of races. He's pretty popular. And it's kind of cool that McIntosh literally called him out and said, "Look, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, you're a hack. I mean, it gave you a win. I mean, like, I don't know what to say." And now that leads me to Ryan's rant. Okay. Now, and because I've been kind of going back and forth with some people on Facebook, and this no fault caution rule, it is absolutely the dumbest rule I have ever seen in the history of racing. It is absolutely idiotic. I mean, it is so stupid. I mean, if you cause a yellow and you have two eyes and you can see it, like that person clearly caused it, make a call, put that guy. Why would you not do that? I have there's no logic. See, I raced and I was fortunate. I had some very good sponsors, and I had years where I was scraping pennies together, right? And like I could really not afford to be there. And I put a lot of time and effort into it. And if I was Christian Hanger, I would have been yard sailing somebody too. You know, you start looking at this, it's like, how can they even justify this? We watched the Wild West shootout down in Arizona, and I can't even tell you, I lost count, Bert, of how many times in the Midwest Mods and Mods especially, where it was clearly, people driving through people and getting wins, right? It was absolutely ridiculous. Lance Schill ran into like every car on the racetrack the night he won, and but why wouldn't you, right? So people are like, well, you think people are going to spin people out on purpose? Yep, absolutely. I mean, obviously, Weaver just said it. Why wouldn't you? You get on a rubbered up one-lane piece of crap racetrack, right? So you can blame the track prep crew for this. If they give you a shitty racetrack and then they give you this stupid rule where they're not going to penalize you for spinning somebody out, why wouldn't you take advantage of it? Like, you got to be dumb not to. Now, the only reason not to is like what T-Mac said. If you go in the pits and somebody knocks you out afterwards, then you'll think twice about it. But he also said people are soft nowadays and they'll be calling their lawyer and all this stuff, and everybody, you know, so you can't do that. Back in the day, like, you just threw it out. You're an idiot and you're going to pay for it. Nowadays, he threatened me, and I'm like, I'm going to press charges and get a, you know, where they can't even be at the racetrack if I'm there anymore. I can see people doing all this nonsense, right? So this no fault, like, for the life of me, okay, can you think of one logical reason for this to even be a rule, to even be a thing? Can you think of anything?
Yeah, I mean, the reason for a rule like that is so whoever is putting on the race isn't responsible for making a call.
So they don't want,
they don't want the responsibility of blaming somebody.
Which is ridiculous.
So they just say, if you stop on the track, you go to the back.
So I think what they should do at the Olympics from now on, right, is when you get to the Olympics, you're in the preliminaries, and all of a sudden you got Team USA, they got two runners in the race, and all of a sudden they got like some dude from Nigeria or whatever that's crazy fast. Well, you know that this guy's probably not going to be a top three. He's probably not going to be in the medal round. So why not just right away, just trip that person? Just like right out of the gates, just trip them so that your guy can win. I mean, it's like Cool Runnings. It's like the movie Cool Runnings, where the guy trips at the beginning and they all, like, the favorites don't make it. Just do that. I mean, you wouldn't even, that's just stupid. And that's really, think about points championships, right? If you're coming down to, like, let's say you got teammates or however it works, and it comes down to the last night and you're battling for a championship, you just spin the guy out.
Wow. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? I would have lost the national championship and I would have been in jail. Okay. I was side by side with Moss. He yard sailed me off the top of turn 3. They made a call. They blamed him, went back a lap. I got the win. I won the national championship. If they would have had the no fault rule there, I would have been boxing on the front straightaway. And win or lose, like I was going to like literally freak out and destroy his race car and smack him in the face for sure. If that rule would have been like that no fault rule, I would have lost my mind. I guarantee it, right? I guarantee it. This rule causes so many more problems than it's worth because they have the ability to just yard sale people with no repercussions. I am so entirely over it, even tonight. And I'm an RTJ fan. I am.
I was going to say, I mean, ask Brian Shirley what he thinks of the rule. He's been on the wrong side at least 2 times this past week.
He has, and like I say, I'm an RTJ fan. I am like I like that's been my pick over the last year. I see him winning a bunch of races, and he won the opening night at Bubba Raceway Park in Ocala. How did he win it? Did he mean to get into Shirley? Absolutely not. I watched it multiple times. Shirley kind of skated a little bit. He was running the middle. Ricky got a run, clipped his right rear, spun him around in a circle. It was a racing deal. Ricky got into him, caused it. The yellow comes out, Shirley to the back. Ricky Thornton Jr. gets the win, and he acknowledged it in victory lane. He didn't say, well, I spun him out on purpose. He's like, man, I feel bad. Like, I got into him. I think, from what I understand, everybody kind of likes Brian Shirley. It seems like a pretty laid-back guy. I think he's pretty popular in the pits, so, I don't think he wanted that drama there. I'm sure Ricky acknowledged it, and he'll probably talk to him about it, because he said right in victory lane, he goes, man, I did not mean to do that. I got into him. First thing he said is he apologized. First class on that. But the fact is, should he have got the win? Absolutely not. When you cause the yellow, you should go to the back. Shirley gets his spot back. It's just common sense. There's no reason for that rule. And now Davenport, I guess right after that, he came in the corner, broke something. Now, he come in and looked like something broke, locked up in the rear end. He slid it sideways, and at first didn't come to a complete stop. Everybody stacked up behind him, and then I think Richards was in that, or maybe not Richards, but Shepard was in it, Owens was in it, tore up a bunch of cars, right? Now, if he would have gathered it up and kept going at that point, can you imagine if he would have got a spot back and won after that? That wouldn't even make sense, right? It would just be idiotic. So is it fair to say that people are entitled to their own opinion?
Well, people are entitled to their own opinion, yeah.
So my opinion, Bert, is this. If you think this rule is good, my opinion of you is you're a complete moron and you're you're stupid. Okay. That's my opinion. And no offense on that. Okay. No offense. But if you think this is a good rule, you are an idiot. Okay. That's just my opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion. Bert, what is your thoughts about this whole deal? Because it just drives me nuts.
I don't like this rule. I mean, I've never liked. I mean, they've tried to implement this locally several times. I've been involved in local racing for many, many years, and I can remember they've tried this rule in the past, and yeah, it just creates problems because, I mean, if you're in a close points battle, you just have to, just race them hard, spin them out, as long as you know that you can continue, and you're going to have the leg up on your competitor. I've never liked the rule. I mean, if you want to go with a rule that's close to a no fault rule, I think it's more fair if both cars go to the back. Okay, you come to the stop, you go to the back, but if you caused it, you go to the back also.
Yeah, and yes and no, because especially in races where you throw like WISSOTA, they take your best 30 shows, right? And if you're leading, let's say it comes down to the last night in a WISSOTA race, and let's say that you have a 1-point lead going into the final race. With this.
Yeah.
And that all you got to do is spin the guy out. Yeah, literally, you can both go to the back, and it just is what it is. It's over. You just won the championship. Yeah, now, if they're going to allow this rule, 2 things have to be allowed along with it. Boxing, okay, that has to be allowed, because if they're not going to police it, let them police themselves. Let somebody go throw down, knock some heads around in the pits, and a lot of that'll come to an end. And B, they got to allow people smashing into people after the race and on yellows and stuff, because why wouldn't you? Literally, it's I can tell you this much: if I was in a points battle or if I was racing in a big race, when when Turbo hit Bobby Pierce at Cedar Lake, he initially tried to like wreck his left, like he tried to drive through him and miss, right? And then he nosed up on him. If you're gonna do it, right? If you know you're gonna get penalized for hitting somebody on a yellow when you got taken out and got screwed and your race is over, tee them up. Like drive wide open into their left rear and rip their bird cage and trailing, like just destroy their car, right? And I guarantee one thing's gonna happen is that person's gonna think long and hard about spinning you out again. I can promise you that.
Well, I mean, another thing this rule does is it allows drivers to hold grudges for 4 months to get their revenge, as we saw with Youngins. I mean, the reason apparently Youngins was so upset about that September deal was he was in a transfer spot in the heat at the time, and Ziggy pushed on him, and Youngins spun out. Ziggy said he didn't even touch him, that Youngins just lost control because he was there. But and Youngins claims he lost a transfer spot because of that, and that cost him $30,000 in point money and standings money. So that's why he says, that's why he said he did it.
Right. Which I get it, because the rule is so dumb. It causes problems. And a friend of mine, Heather, her and Nolan, they own the Devil's Lake Speedway, and she's been pretty vocal about this on the message boards with me. And she's like, it is ridiculous. Like, why it comes down to laziness, right? It comes down to officials not like, I don't have to make a call. I can literally just sit there and the flagman can be a glorified lap counter. Like, they don't have a job. All they can do is wave the flag. They don't really have a job. They don't got to make any calls. You don't need corner workers. You don't need any officials. You don't need a flagman. Like, you don't even need a flagman. Like, they could have the headset. Hey, we're going green. Green this time. Yellow. Checker. You don't even need a flagman anymore. They don't make calls anyway, so why even have a flagman? Why pay the extra officials? See, in a series like this, Bert, there's officials there. Let them make a call if they can make a call. If it's a questionable deal and they're not sure, you're exactly right. Put them both to the back. It is what it is. Sometimes you mess up. And guess what? Sometimes you're going to make the wrong call. And I've been on the end of the wrong call, on the good side and on the bad side, right? It evens itself out. You're mad when you get a bad call, but I'd rather have that than just being able to yard sale people, right? So that absolutely makes no sense. But the other thing, if you think about Lucas Oil, World of Outlaws Sprints, every one of them has streaming platforms showing the race live. Every one of them. And it does not take more than like 10 seconds, right? With all the camera views that they have, to have somebody up in the booth. They could have an official in the MAV TV booth, for example, right? Because you saw all the camera angles they had. They could have a series official sitting in that booth, and in literally the snap of a finger, they could rewatch it and go, oh, yep, that's the call right there. The equipment's there. Now, I'm not saying delay the race, right? I'm not saying that. But if you can do it in a timely fashion, that is way better than just putting the guy. Like Brian Shirley tonight, he wasn't going to win. He was not going to win, but he might have got fifth, because he was kind of fading a little bit, but he might have finished up fifth, sixth, somewhere in there, which was in the money, right? He would have been in a pretty good position, and it just wrecked his night. And of course, this plays on the points deal, right? Because you take Strickler and RTJ, they're going head to head for a battle here for Rookie of the Year. There's money on the line, and now he gets a free gift. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Now, you've heard Puka talk many times about his legendary friend Tom Nesbitt, right? Now, do you know much about Tom Nesbitt?
I know he can be, well, he can get upset about when calls don't go his way. I know that. I've seen that.
He allegedly burnt down the judges' stand at the Superior Speedway. Everybody knows he did it, right? Burned it down. Got a bad call, burned it right to the ground, right? This guy he's punched people in the face. This guy at pit meetings, and I loved it because every time that he was vocal at the pit meeting, and he was vocal, and he got his point across, and he probably didn't do it in a diplomatic way, but every time he said it, he was right. It's like, this is bullshit. This needs to change, and he'd be like vocal. But guess what? People would listen. They wouldn't always like what he had to say. I was in Casson one night. This was back 02 or 03, running a WISSOTA Late Model Challenge Series show. And Nesbitt was like right ahead of me. I think I was maybe 6th, 7th at the time. A couple cars that were up in the top 5 took each other out. I don't remember who they were, but I just remember 2 cars took each other out. I don't remember who even caused it. It was probably too far ahead of me to even know that, right? Well, the yellow comes out, and we didn't have receivers at the time. It was everything they stopped. There was before receivers. They couldn't make a call. And at first, they give them both their spot back. And we're going around in parade laps, and I look over there. There's Nesbitt stopped on the front straightaway. And I'm like, what's going on? And I'm thinking, why did nobody go to the back? I'm thinking in my mind, well, then they stop us in 3 and 4, and he is going absolutely apeshit. He's like, I'm not moving. Seriously, you're putting one of them to the back, or you're putting both of them to the back. Somebody's going to the back. I'm not moving. And literally, the wrecker came out. He got over. He pushed the wrecker guy in the ground. I mean, he went absolutely nuts, right? And I think he got escorted out of there that night. And you know who went to the back? It was him. They kicked him off, but they still didn't put anybody in the back. I can't even imagine if they had that no-fault rule when Nesbitt was in his prime, and if somebody spun him out when he was leading, dude, he would have killed somebody. He would have burnt the track down, their house down. This guy would have went absolutely bonkers. That's going to happen one of these days. There's going to be somebody with a massive temper that gets taken out of a big race, leading or going for the lead, kind of like Turbo was up in the top 3 at Cedar Lake, right? Where they go completely mental. It's going to be far worse than that. And whose fault it's going to be? It's going to be the series' fault, because they aren't willing to have a backbone and make a call. Is absolutely stupid.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't disagree with you, and I'll just add my own Nesbitt story. I mean, living on the eastern side of the state, I didn't get to see him race all that often, but I believe it was at Menominee. I was at a race, and he got called for a caution, and he got sent to the back. And every lap around the track after that, when he crossed the flag, when he went by the flag stand, he flipped the flag man off.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you get some of them personalities. Back in the day, that's just the way it was. So when it comes down to it, make a call. I mean, if it's obvious, call it. I mean, come on, it's not that difficult. I'm waiting, and when I get to a Lucas Oil race or a World of Outlaw race this year, I'm going to find the series director, and I'm going to ask them, why do they have this rule? Because I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious to hear why they have this rule. Dude, most people don't know. If you don't race, or if you haven't raced at a high level or for championships, you probably haven't put a lot of time into it. But these guys put, whether it's their money or not, right? This is their livelihood. A lot of these guys, this is what they do for a living. They get a percentage of their win. This is their job, right? And even if it's on a local level, people are racing. They need the money to go to the next show. That's just the way it is. And when you're putting all this time in and all this passion and you're putting so much into it, and you literally get robbed, that'd be like you going to work for a week and somebody just saying, we ain't going to pay you this week. Just don't feel like it. Whatever. I'm giving him the money instead. No. That it just doesn't even make sense. So that's enough of that. But that no-fault rule.
I just want to make one more point. I mean, I saw this on Facebook. Somebody posted this on Facebook that the Lucas Oil and World of Outlaws, they travel the country. So they said, well, maybe this rule is in place so they can pump the slower local cars out of the way.
It could be. I mean, but Shirley's not a points chaser, I guess.
Well, right.
But I mean, I guess it's happened to lots of them. But I mean, again, why wouldn't you? If you're a driver, other than just being able to sleep at night, right? There is that, right? But if you're battling for the lead, and the track's one lane, why wouldn't? I mean, why not spin them out? Why not? Right? I mean, you're gonna probably get it back down the road. But if you're racing for $50,000 to win and it's $20,000 for second, why not just punt the guy? Why? The rule's in place. They ain't going to make a call anyway. They're giving you the win if you keep going. Why not do it? And, is it right? Is it wrong? Should a guy do that? Probably not. But, if they ain't going to make a call, why? Don't hate the player. Hate the game, right? And that's the game. And who's going to take advantage of that? Turbo, right? Bobby Pierce. Ziggy, some of them guys, they aren't afraid to chuck elbows. You know, they're not afraid of it. And somebody's going to come around and they're just going to be like, whatever, I got the raw end of this deal 2-3 times. I'm just going to move everybody out of the way from now on. It's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, I'll be astonished. It should happen. Bert, that gets us to the last lap here. And a lot of racing coming up, right? We had night one was coursed tonight. RTJ won over at Ocala. Night number two, you know, I don't know if I'm going to post this on Tuesday. Probably going to post it on Tuesday. So Tuesday night, anyway, night number two at Ocala. And then
this week, you must be in heaven with it being Mod Week.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. So, you know what's crazy is back in the day, and back just a handful of years ago, a bunch of WISSOTA guys would go down to Volusia, which starts Tuesday. I don't exactly know how many. It's at least a week. I think it's a week. But it's going to be mods and sprint cars basically this week. Kind of a split deal. I know that the mods are on Dirt Vision, and one of them, I think the other one's on Flow or something like that. Like it's weird how the sprint cars, they're streaming it. They're both at the same race, but the sprint car portion is on one streaming platform. You'll have to look it up, and the mod portion is on another streaming platform. So it's kind of weird to me that they're doing that. But Johnny Broking, a guy that, you know, that runs really good. He had 3 track championships up in WISSOTA country. He won at the Gondik Speedway in Superior, the Hibbing Raceway, and then he won over at the Donlinger Ford Grand Rapids Speedway. He's actually making the trip. The Brokings usually make the trip down to Volusia. They're down there already enjoying some beach weather today. So I'm going to keep an eye on that 45J. I don't know if there's any other mods from our area going. I know Jason Gross usually heads down. I'm not sure if he is. I looked at his Facebook page. I didn't see anything, so I'm assuming not. But talk about my height of glory, Bert. There's 604 crates too, baby. I mean, we're talking about mods in this. You know, that's one thing, but we got 604 crates Thursday, Friday, Saturday at East Bay, and that's going to be on Flow. Jeff Provenzino going to be down there running for the Dirt Daddy there, one of the joiners, Pod Joiner. He's running a 28 special. He went to Volusia, didn't fare real well, but I'll be kind of keeping an eye on Flow, seeing if one of our locals up there can go down and do some damage in that 604 late. And I can tell you this much, his car was a little snug at Volusia, and if it didn't turn very good there, he might be in really big trouble at East Bay. So hopefully he got that car to rotate. And another thing going on there, Bert, this week, you know, for our sprint car buddy, USAC Midgets up at Bubba. Okay, Friday and Saturday, that's going to be at Flow. Saw an announcement today. Who's going to be racing at that one?
Oh, the champion of NASCAR, Chase Elliott.
Yep, and that surprised me. I figured maybe if he's racing, I figured maybe Kyle Larson would too. But Kyle said he wants to focus on the Daytona 500. That's his focus. And but Chase Elliott, he's actually ran pretty good in that midget. So them are pretty fun to watch. I'm telling you, I like late models, I like mods, I like sprints, but midgets, them things are up on the wheel, slicing, dicing. So that'll be pretty interesting to see. And it gets really tight coming out of 4 at Bubba, so I'm wondering how many are going to cartwheel there. That'll be interesting to see. Now, a little bit more news came out in WISSOTA country. They actually, in 2020, there was really nothing. They didn't have national points. They did not have the Challenge Series. But this weekend, they announced the structural buildings WISSOTA Late Model Challenge Series for 2021. And a couple of things that stuck out to me there, Bert. For the first time since like 1980-ish, somewhere there, early 80s, Princeton Speedway is going to be hosting a late model show. They haven't had late models for 40 years at Princeton.
Wow.
That is crazy to me. So that's a bull ring. That's a little quarter mile, small 3/8 turn and burn, kind of like a Watertown deal, no wall. That could be a pretty interesting race there. The South Dakota Swing, Dakota State Fair Speedway in Huron. They had one race last year. They've kind of been off the last couple of years. They got 2 races in the same weekend. Kind of a weird deal. They got Wheel Jam down there. They run Thursday at Huron. Friday, they drive like 100 miles to Aberdeen. And then they come back to Huron for Saturday. And then Sunday up to Watertown. So weird to me. I mean, I guess it is what it is. They make it work. But to me, I'm thinking, why wouldn't they do like it just a double header somewhere instead of all that driving back and forth? But hopefully they get a good turnout. I think one of them shows is going to be pretty good paying. I haven't seen the details, and probably the biggest one that I noticed on there, and they're still working on the details. I talked to Bulldog today. They're having the Challenge Series race over at the Red Cedar Speedway, the Mater Memorial, Dwayne Mater Memorial, and they don't have everything finalized yet, but the goal and what they're working towards is 15,555 to win and 455 to start. And I believe that's the biggest late model payout in the history of WISSOTA late models for a single day event. So that's a pretty cool deal. And then it closes up on my stomping grounds up at Proctor, Grand Rapids, and Hibbing. So lots of good stuff happening. I think there's 17 shows on the schedule. Structural Buildings, of course, the title sponsor. They also sponsor a guy we talked about a little bit last year, Dave Moss, who he ran pretty well. He won the points up at I-94 Speedway last year, I-94 Sure Step Speedway. And it sounds like because he's sponsored by Structural Buildings, he's going to follow that. But knowing enough about the late model guys and who we talked about last year, Bert, just a really quick pick. Do you have a guy that you're going to be like, you know what, I'm going to pick this guy to win the points this year for the Challenge Series?
Well, I mean, it's hard to do that not knowing who's actually gonna run the entire series. I mean, I did look at the schedule, and there's only 3 Wisconsin races. I believe there's only 3 Wisconsin races on the schedule, and I mean that's amazing to me because I mean, we used to. I mean, at least me, the western part of Wisconsin was just littered with WISSOTA tracks, but late models don't race at all the tracks, but you think of it, what are the WISSOTA tracks that race late models on a weekly basis?
Let me touch on that. So there's only 2 WISSOTA late model tracks in Wisconsin. One of them, of course, is Menominee. They're having the Mater, and I should touch on this, that the Twin 25s up at the Gondikla Speedway, Troy and Jonathan Powers put that deal together. That's been a fan favorite, driver favorite for a long time, that Twin 25s. The first feature of that event is a Challenge Series race as well. So both the regular tracks and then Rice Lake, they're having one as well. So them are the 3. Cedar Lake's kind of the track that everybody races at in that Eau Claire area. Mm-hmm. They're not having a Challenge Series show just because they haven't been able to mend fences with WISSOTA. I don't know all the details there, but yeah, you're right. But all them guys seem to travel. You think about, I'll just let you pick. That's a couple things that's going on there. Why don't you go ahead and just throw?
I'll make my pick. I'll go with the Double One Express.
Bert, you can't do that. That was going to be my pick. Kidding me? Well, I can't pick the same guy. That when I unveiled it with Carson from WISSOTA, that's what I kind of called out to. I kind of expected to win. I'm going to take my dark horse now. My dark horse is a guy that last year, literally, he did not win as much as we'd like. He didn't finish on the podium as much as we'd like. But if I'm not taking Pat Doer, I'm taking Jeffrey Massengill, because at every big show last year, he was in the conversation. He was there. And that's what it takes to win a 17-race series. It takes consistently running up front. You don't need to win every race, right? I expect him to win some more than he did last year. But I'm going to pick Jeffrey Massengill to, after his kind of breakout season, so to speak, to maybe come out on top of that Challenge Series deal for 2021. So it's going to be fun to watch. A lot of that's going to be on Dirt Race Central, and a lot of good things. Another thing that got announced today, Bert, and I don't know if you got the notes in front of you or not, but there's some big late model stuff going on. Literally 3 $50,000 to win late model shows, and one of them has a chance to be $100,000. Do you want to briefly touch on what you know there, and then I'll fill in a little bit?
Well, one of the $50,000 super late model races is in Texas. I can't remember the exact racetrack it's at.
Texas Motor Speedway in Fort Worth, right next to the NASCAR.
But unfortunately, that's the same weekend as Knoxville, when the Lucas Oil Series is racing in Knoxville. So I'm not quite sure if they looked at the schedule before they scheduled this race, or if they said, screw it, we're going to do it anyway. But I mean, you're not going to get any of the Lucas Oil regulars there. World of Outlaws, they do not race that weekend, but I mean, it's a long drive to Texas, and I don't know what the rest of their schedule is. So, I mean, I wish them the best of luck, but I'm a little leery of that one. And then the Duel in the Desert is going to have super late models, and that's going to be $50,000 to win. But they also have a double down feature, and maybe you can explain that a little bit better. And who's promoting these races?
Yeah, so Barry Braun, Race XR, actually from Silver Bay. He's actually promoting, and all three are tied together, same owners, right? So he did the Duel in the Desert in Vegas last year. That same person owns Texas Motor Speedway. They own Bristol, okay? So that group or however. So he got tied into that, and I believe it's in March is going to be the first of three, and that's kind of, they have their big deal before the NASCAR race, $50,000 to win super late models at Bristol. And then it's going to be in September, like you said, at the Texas Motor Speedway, literally up against the Lucas Oil race. I'm like, man, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not, I'm not a fan of that. Like, literally, I can't understand why they can't move it back a week. It makes no sense. I'm sure they have their reasons. Okay. Now, after that in November, that's going to be the Duel in the Desert. And for the first time ever, late models will be there, $50,000 to win. Now, if you had perfect attendance and you ran all three shows, right? Wherever you finish in the feature at the Vegas race, you get double pay. So if it's $50,000 to win, which that's what it is to win, and you happen to be at Bristol and you were at Texas, and then you happen to win the $50,000 to win race up at Vegas, it's not $50,000 to win, it's $100,000 to win. And that is for every position in the late model feature. So, like, literally, whatever the payout is, and I haven't seen the whole payout, if everybody ran, yeah, it'd be double for all of it. I'm like, where's he come up with all this money? It's crazy. Yeah. But the only disappointing thing I have in the whole deal is the fact that they're racing head-to-head with Knoxville. That frustrates me because it's twice as far to go from Eldora to Texas as it is to go from Eldora to Knoxville. And they're in Eldora the week before, and I believe they have the deal at Fairbury in between there. I haven't looked at the schedule, but I feel like they had. Sure. Yeah, they did last year. So I don't know if they're going from Eldora to Fairbury, over to Knoxville. But I guess it is what it is. I mean, there's enough late model. I would think but it's weird, right? Now, you think about all the late model races, Bert, that are east side of the country, whether it's Tennessee or Florida or Georgia or wherever, they have super late models there. And typically you'll see, you look at East Bay and there's probably 20 or so fairly regional drivers that just happen to kind of fill in, right? Can you name me really any super late model drivers from like west of the Mississippi?
Not off the top of my head.
So that in line, they're relying 100% on travelers to fill this in, right? So you think about some of the guys, you take a guy like Madden or Overton that are way over South Carolina and Georgia, they're way over there. Are they going to go all the way across the country to Texas or Vegas? It's yet to be determined. It'll be interesting to see. Hopefully he promotes that well. Hopefully, anything for racing is good. So that's some in the dirt late model world. There's some big things happening this year. I'm not calling him a crown jewel. He called it a crown jewel. I'm not calling it a crown jewel.
I was just going to get to that. I mean, because in the press release it said, introducing a crown jewel, and we've had this discussion on the show before. What makes a crown jewel? Is it just money, or is there other things that go into the equation?
Yeah, it's got to be a little bit. I think it's got to be a little bit more established. It can't be like a first-time show. But regardless, there's a lot of money on the line. And I'll end with this. They announced the overall payout for that IMCA. It's a Great Lakes deal or whatever it's called. It's something I don't remember what it's called, but it's at Princeton, Brainerd, and Granite City Motor Park. They're having IMCA mods, sport mods, and IMCA stock cars, and it's 10,000 to win. And I'm thinking in my mind, all right, in order to make this deal work, I'm thinking 5,000, 4,000, something like that for second, maybe 400 or 500 to start. I figured that would be a good pay. It's like 10, 9, 8, 7. It's 1,000 to start. I'm going, so it's like a 70 some $1,000 purse they're doing for the Saturday and Sunday show. And it's a little bit more than half of that for the Thursday and Friday. Crazy money. And I really hope it works out, because I mean, it's nice seeing drivers, and they got a bunch registered. I believe there's already 80 mods registered for that deal. So it's gonna be one of Puka's favorite shows. They're probably gonna have 300 cars or so that he'll be excited to get there. But lots of money on the line. It's crazy how they're throwing a lot of money. There's a lot of big specials, a lot of big paying events. I mean, even you look at the Challenge Series show down at the Mater, that's 15,555, bigger than any late model show. A lot of stuff going on. So, Bert, with that said, that's episode, I believe, 65, isn't it, in the book? Yeah, episode 65. And, let's just close with this. A lot of racing going on. We all hate the no-fault rule. It's absolutely stupid. Whether you like modifieds, late models, midgets, sprint cars, or even short trackers, right? There is something going on for you this week. So, enjoy. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoy some racing this week. Don't be afraid to text us. Shoot us a text, a message. If you got either one of us, our numbers, get a hold of us somehow. If you see something that sticks out, that's controversial or exciting, or that maybe you're like, hey, you should talk about this, reach out to us, because that's how we get our ideas. We got a few people. We got Jeff and Pete and Keith and several others that are always feeding us information, say, hey, talk about this, talk about that. Don't be afraid to shoot some information over, because we can't catch everything. There's a lot of racing going on, but if there's something controversial, we definitely like to talk about it. So with that said, I'm Ryan. That's the Bert Lehman, and Puka always says, go out there and be your dream. Thanks a lot for tuning in to the One to Go show.